Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to my ritual night talk for July 6th. I'm Scott Stenwick, your host for these ritual night events, hosted under the auspices of Leaping Laughter OTO in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I have included just the donation link tonight. Donations, you know what to do. Second of all, I got to do my good YouTuber thing, which I forgot in the last couple times. So like the video, subscribe to the videos, and click on the little bell for notifications to be notified when we go online on YouTube here. So get my little good YouTuber spiel out of the way there. Now tonight, I am going to be talking about a topic in occultism that is, fairly widespread, the idea of initiation into a particular system or tradition or whatever you want to call it, however you want to do it. There are a lot of traditions. A lot of them have initiatory rituals. Some of them, many of them, follow what I call the mystery tradition model, which I'll be talking about in a little bit here. And others of them are more technical initiations that involve energy work or attunements or something like that. And what I want to talk about here is some of the benefits of initiation and what initiation does, why a person should do it, and how an initiatory tradition is different from some of the discussions that I've been having, over a month or two about some of these ideas about gatekeeping in traditions and some of the toxic things that can arise around that. Now, what an initiation is, generally speaking, is it is some sort of a ritual or a practice that attunes you with or connects you with a magical spiritual current of some sort. A number of groups will talk about this idea of egregores, this kind of idea of it's like this kind of group mind or like group battery of power kind of idea. And I will say that having done a little bit of investigation on this, I will say there is maybe a little bit of something to the idea of an egregore in the sense of thought patterns that can kind of persist within the group. So you wind up seeing, different kinds of behavior patterns at different times that are similar to each other or follow a certain sort of narrative. On the other hand, it is also possible that some of those narratives really come from the structure of initiatory groups and how people treat those initiations and how people treat the steps or degrees or however you want to describe it of the tradition. Degree is the most common. Many of these come out of the Masonic model, and the Masonic system uses first, second, and third degree is primary in Masonry. So this is kind of a thing where, and a lot of traditions picked up that model because Masonry is hundreds of years old, and it made a good model for more esoteric groups. And in fact, in the past, like around more 1900, 1910, Masonry itself tended to be more esoteric than I generally find it today. But that's like a separate conversation. Suffice it to say that most of the degree-based traditions have to do with some sort of a Masonic foundation, regardless of how much they've diverged or changed from that structure. If you look at some of the Eastern traditions, on the other hand, you will see things like empowerments for particular deities. That's an initiatory process. You'll see things like energetic attunements, like what you have in systems like Reiki, where you have like Reiki levels that you can attune to. Those kinds of things. All these things are initiatory in the general sense, in that they're connecting you to this kind of magical current, whatever that is. Now, in some systems, and especially a couple of the systems in Thelema that I'm familiar with, especially the OTO, also as I understand it, the AA, what you have is you have preliminary degrees that you take, which are initiatory, but what they are is they're designed to prepare you for deciding whether you want to go further in the order. So in the AA, you have the probationer grade, and in OTO, which I'm most familiar with, in which I am a chartered initiator, we have the Minerval degree, in which you're considered a guest of the OTO. And so part of the point of the Minerval degree, and I think also, as far as I know, the probationer degree in AA, is they're designed to give the order a chance to check you out and give you a chance to check the order out. Fraternal organizations, the OTO, magical orders in general are not for everybody. Okay. It's, as much as it would be nice to have everybody is interested in, coming into the order and everybody is fine with, working together under a set of common principles. Well, that's, not really a thing that you're going to see universally out in the culture. And, even in magical orders, you have people who come in and, maybe, they get frustrated with or even angry about, some of the order policies and things like this. And, really it's just basically they're not in harmony with what the order is doing. And this can be true of any organization. I've seen some of that sort of thing happen, in Masonry. I'm also a Mason. And certainly I've seen a lot of stuff online about groups that blow up, groups that schism, members that leave, and all this kind of stuff over various disputes. And it seems to be this is just kind of a thing that goes on. It seems like, for one thing, at least where Thelemites are concerned, much of running a Thelemic order is this gigantic cat herding thing. Okay, because we're all individuals. We all have our own individual perspectives. The idea of Thelema is based on the idea of do these practices and to the best of your ability, be as true to yourself and to your own will as you possibly can be. So given that, you could see how that works is you're going to wind up with a bunch of people pulling in a bunch of different directions. And it's basically an issue of trying to kind of provide a structure to hold that together. And that's one of the things that the initiatory degree structure does do. It provides some structure to this otherwise completely amorphous thing that you could otherwise get. At the same time, I have come across Thelemites online who sincerely believe that joining any kind of organization would, to a degree, restrict their will because organizations do have rules, they do have regulations, and so forth. And I would say to someone like that, probably that's the kind of person who an order is not for them. If they're really just interested in, I really want to just pursue my own will and I want to focus on that, and I don't want to have to worry about working in a group that, might have policies, procedures, whatever that get in the way of that expression. And I think that that's a completely valid way to approach it. Personally, I feel like I've gotten a lot out of the OTO in terms of my own magical practice, in terms of just kind of, grounding and stabilizing some of the work that I'm doing. One of the biggest advantages is being able to get together, work with other people, and compare notes in this kind of fraternal setting. And that is, as you can imagine, with my talk about scientific magic, peer review, probability testing, all this kind of stuff that I want to do, and all this kind of stuff that I want to do that's, independent of me. I mean, I want magic to work like a technology that, I don't believe in magic. Well, that's okay. It believes in you, that kind of a thing. Because, like science works whether you have faith in it or not. And magic is the same way, or should be, with the exception that you need to have enough faith in yourself that you're not doubting what you're doing as you're doing it. What that does is that kind of breaks the coherence of your consciousness. And so it's like you can do a ritual and be completely focused on, it'll work when you do it. And then, afterwards you're like, I wonder if that'll work. That's okay. That doesn't really get you into trouble. But it's where if you are, kind of two minds about what you're doing, I find that will destabilize a lot of stuff. And what helps there in a group is that you can sit down and you can talk about this stuff. And I mean, you can usually find people who are interested in some of the things you are. So I want to conjure, X kind of spirit. I come to Lodge, I say, hey, I want to do this kind of work. Who's done it? And you'll find, maybe one or two brothers or sisters will have. So you sit down, have a chat. You can get some guidance there right away. And you've got a group to draw from in terms of the practices you're looking at. But, and it's not a case where, you're working with a single teacher, like at least how Crowley outlined the AA to work. And so, you're limited to, just what this one teacher says you should be working on. In a fraternal setting, more like the OTO, more like a Masonic kind of structure, it's more about cultivating fraternity and learning about magic that way, which I think I've mentioned before. I really think that if you're talking about new eon magic and how to learn in the new eon, where we're getting away from, some of these structural ideas, I think that's a good way to go. At the same time, I am not a fan of jettisoning structure entirely. A number of the ideas in the magic that I do come out of more freeform systems like chaos magic and hoodoo and some of these things. But I bring it back into the basic structure that was laid down by Crowley in the Thelemic system, primarily because he was really the first, groundbreaking person to put a lot of that stuff out there. It's not like maintained behind this wall of secrecy and an order and stuff like that. Now, that gets me on to point number 2, which is it may seem a little incoherent for me to talk about, I don't necessarily like this idea of gatekeeping magical technology. I'd like magical technology to be subject to peer review. I would like to see more of an open culture than, much of what you see in some organizations. And at the same time saying, but we need to keep our initiation secret. Okay. So what's going on there? I'm like, suddenly a gatekeeping tack or something like that? No, I'm not. And here's the reason. All the way back to antiquity, okay, there is a technology that has been used in initiatory organizations called the mystery school technology, or just called the mystery school. It's not called a mystery school technology. They're just called mystery schools. But the technology is the method that they use, okay? And the key to a mystery school is you are being placed in a situation in which you have no idea what's going to happen, okay? And what that does is that's going to create this kind of cognitive dissonance in your mind about what you might be imagining is going to happen versus what is happening. And that cognitive dissonance increases the ability of the initiation to imprint its theme, its lesson, and or its magical significance upon your mind, your physical body, and your body of light, sphere of sensation, however you want to refer to that. That is the reason that we keep the initiation secret. It's not because, there's some there's like some thing that we don't want people to know about in the initiations. What it's about is, it's about making sure that somebody who might someday want to take the initiation, and this is, I think, really important in the age of the internet, okay, won't just randomly come across this initiation ritual and read it, and then years later they decide to take the degree and then, this is just the ritual that I saw, okay? So that's kind of, that's kind of crappy, right? You wanted to come into this ritual situation and experience the full power of the ritual, but you aren't going to because it's a thing that you read years ago, maybe not even realizing it was the same degree, right? And so it's like, that's kind of a problem. So that's the point of secrecy. That's why the OTO, for example, tries to keep its rituals from, being published in forums and stuff like that. It's because the power of the ritual, to some degree, comes from you not knowing about it, walking into it, okay? And now, some groups I've heard of that take this idea like way further. Like they have a mystery school type, they have mystery school type initiations, which they do keep secret. But in addition to that, they keep like every aspect of magical technology secret. And I really, okay, it's like, okay, you join a magical organization. All right. Now here is the secret document that you must never reveal to anyone. And you open it up and it's the lesser ritual, the pentagram. Okay. It's like, oh, you're not supposed to tell anybody you do that because nobody can know how we do magic. It's like, come on. That's really silly. And it's like especially when, I mean, this is a ritual that, I mean, it is published in like, every book of magic practically. It's like, I even have it in my Enochian books with the point in the paragraph about it saying, Fred actually literally asked me, do we really need another occult book with the LRP in it? And well, I'm going to talk about it, so I got to outline how to do it in a handbook format. I do not have detailed analysis of it or anything like that. I'll leave that to other people. But the idea behind non-mystery school technology being secret, in that sense, I think that, this is something where as magicians, we should continue to work toward openness, and we should continue to work toward, to the degree possible, sharing peer review, making our experiments replicable, and so on, with the caveat that consciousness is one of the variables and we can't directly measure it. But aside from that, to be as scientific as we can. And we know from psychology that this mystery school idea, this coming into an unknown situation, definitely creates all these psychological effects. And in addition, most magical initiations have some, energy work type components that work with your sphere of sensation, work with, the psychic energy centers. A lot of them work with chakras, for example, type of a thing. And so what you wind up with is, so you have this cognitive dissonance effect, which is what empowers most of the dramatic elements of the ritual. And then on top of that, you have these energetic elements, which kind of create, the magical foundation of the ritual. I have found mostly in Masonry, pretty much the effect of the ritual is dramatic, and most of the effect of it actually comes from that whole cognitive dissonance imprint. And in Masonry, there are like specific lessons and teachings associated with the degrees that imprint better because you're in that heightened state of mind. Likewise, there are principles like that embodied in OTO initiations, and all in combination with other, thelemic and magical ideas as part of the degree. So you've got this kind of common platform that, so not only did you not know what was going on going into this, everybody else had the same experience. Okay. And so what you have is you have this commonality of having gone through this system of initiation with these people you are working with. And that does create a fraternal connection. Even in like a college frat even has that. They'll have some ritual that occasionally college frats, there are a handful that I've heard of that have just like unbelievably complex initiation rituals. Like, wow, as a magician, I'm impressed looking at that. But often it's just something, it's some really, simple ceremony that's like more of like a hazing kind of thing where, you're just basically trying to, scare off people who are going to scare off easily and see who's, devoted enough to go through that. Once you come through on the other side, okay, you're part of that group now. And there is this kind of immediate social connection that happens there. And I think that social connection also facilitates magical work. So I talk about coherence. You want to be of, one mind when you do a magical operation. Well, with a group of people, you have to have coherence across the entire group. Okay. And usually that's harder than working with your own coherence, right? Because you can get your mind together, but now, okay, well, I'm working with a group here of, 5 other people. They have to be doing the same thing. And then similar to the egregore idea, the group has this kind of coherence of its own. Whether it works like a battery or not, that's kind of a question. I have had people claim that, oh yes, so this ritual is part of this tradition, and therefore it connects you into this egregore. And so once you're initiated, you'll see it'll work really great. Okay. I had a poll on my blog about that, of people who joined traditions and were told that. And I don't have a very good sample size, but I did not find one person whose rituals like suddenly improved when they did an initiation into this tradition. Okay. So it could be a very slow effect. And part of it just can be related to initiation is like, it's kind of like also a way of saying, I'm serious about this. I want to do this. And part of the Western tradition, generally speaking, involves some kind of an initiation on some level that has to do with magic, unless you're talking about, stuff that is completely intended for solitary practitioners. But even then, I mean, like there are grimoires that talk about things like contacting specific spirits, making pacts with specific spirits, and things like that, which can be thought of as an initiatory kind of thing. Likewise, something like the Grimoire of Abramelin is basically a big, long initiatory ordeal that you go through. And at the end, you're supposed to contact the Holy Guardian Angel. And that was worked into Thelema with Liber Samux. So Thelema has its own derived system for doing that. That is based off of the Bornless ritual, which is based off of the Stele of Jehu, which goes back to the Greek magical papyri, and so forth. Okay. So from a technical standpoint, I believe that, group rituals are going to be more coherent if you're dealing with a group of people who have commonalities. And if that commonality is a more intense commonality from going through a mystery school tradition and connecting with a magical current, seems to me that that's the kind of thing where, at least in a group, you're going to get better outcomes from your operations. And that seems to hold up. But again, small sample size. So, I gotta be careful about my scientific conclusions. So, but here's the difference, though, between that sort of mystery school initiation and what I would consider more of a gatekeepery or toxic kind of approach to it. Okay, so first of all, this idea of technology about basic technology about how we do magic. Like you join a group and they give you, well, here's the lesser ritual, the pentagram, which is published everywhere. Don't tell anybody. Okay, that's not only silly, it's also excessively controlling. It is very easy to go out on the internet and find these basic rituals. They're really not that. It's really not something that is like this great hidden thing that would set us apart from normal people or whatever. Second of all, I do think that if you're looking at, there are some groups that are initiatory, but they're culty. Okay. Classic example was that NXIVM cult that got busted, like the founder is in jail and all that kind of stuff. You can look that up. I'm not going to do a whole overview of this, but they had some stuff like that. And it was focused around a single charismatic leader, like it often is, who was considered to be infallible, considered to have all the answers. Okay. And, often groups like that wind up just going toxic, because what they're really looking for is they're looking for bringing in people who are easy to manipulate. They're not really looking toward bringing in, strong critical thinkers. It's one of the differences between culty meditation and how to do effective meditation too. Culty teachers will often tell you that to meditate, you have to force your thoughts to stop. And I've talked about this a number of times. And it's made it into popular culture. Oh yeah, I have attention deficit disorder. I can't meditate. My mind wanders too much. Not true. That's not how it works. You can meditate even if your mind wanders a lot. And what it's going to do is it's going to help your mind not wander as much. It's like you're not failing if your mind wanders. But groups that use it as a thought stopping kind of process, again, usually at the behest of, some charismatic, infallible leader, usually that becomes toxic. Okay, the other thing that I think is toxic is policing experimentation with rituals. Now, there's a side of this that is reasonable. Like if I'm coming out on the air. Yeah, I'm a Golden Dawn initiate, and check out my Golden Dawn ritual. And you do like something from the ATRs or something like that, right? Okay, somebody who's a member of the Golden Dawn tradition can easily look at you and say, that's not part of the Golden Dawn tradition. I mean, what you're doing, okay, it's magic. It's not Golden Dawn magic. On the other hand, it could turn super toxic when you've got people on the internet like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Can you answer these simple questions about the LRB? And they're like, oh, read a book, stupid. Oh, you're doing it wrong. Oh, you're this, and it winds up being a little like, and sometimes you even get this whole like dog pile on some forums. And it's like, you wind up with a situation where like Scott Adams of Dilbert fame always commented, he's like, so in corporate meetings, the way that you deal with a corporate meeting is to make sure that you communicate, I am worthy of promotion while conveying no other information, because any other information could get you in trouble, or it could reveal you're wrong, or it could reveal something, or it could, but you stick with that, I am worthy of promotion, attention, you spending a lot of money on my classes, this kind of stuff, which it turns into this position jockeying thing. And it's just silly. The other thing that I come across that I think is toxic is the whole fear mongering thing. Oh, you're going to go insane if you do thus and such magic. There is no evidence anywhere that is documented that magic causes mental illness. I've looked into this for years, okay? And like I said, 1 person in 4 in our culture has some form of mental illness, okay? So in order to show that magic caused mental illness, you would have to show that more than 1 in 4 magicians have issues with mental illness. And I don't think that's the case. I would say that it's probably, I don't see any evidence that it's substantially lower than the regular population, but I also don't see any evidence that it's substantially higher. And a lot of the time, these are just ill-informed people who are repeating rumors and stuff like that. But the basic thing is trying to discourage people from just getting out and doing the practice. That, I think, is a toxic thing, okay? And it is also one thing to, offer constructive, critical feedback on rituals. Somebody posts a ritual online, you're like, well, maybe you want to do it this way or that way, as opposed to what you're doing, because I think it might work better. That can be completely reasonable. Often what I tell people is, cool, here's what the tradition says, here's what you're saying, experiment with both, see which works best. That's how I always try to frame it. But on the other hand, people trying to make sure that, let's say, you're looking for Golden Dawn magic, and I'm searching for Golden Dawn magic. And then what comes up is like some ATR thing that is like not even remotely Golden Dawn. And then people think, oh, that's what the Golden Dawn is. I could see validity to that as well, just in terms of, being clear on what particular traditions include and what particular traditions don't include. Also, in a fraternal organization, there is the issue of sponsorship, which I don't see necessarily as a toxic gatekeepery kind of thing, but rather, you want to be able to vouch for a person who's coming in and going through the degree system, because you're trying to maintain coherence in the group. If you see somebody and you're like, wow, that person, they're really going to be a problem working with other people, you'd be like, maybe I'll hold off on sponsoring them. On the other hand, sometimes people do the thing where, they put on, the good face and you sponsor them, and then they wind up, going off in some other direction, and, you're embarrassed that you vouch for them. But that's kind of part of the thing. You want to be in a position when you're sponsoring people that, they're not that you're pretty sure they're not somebody who's going to embarrass you. But if you do sponsor people, that is probably going to happen. Probably you're going to wind up sponsoring somebody, and there'll be something that you missed for something. We do our best. And again, the idea is to kind of maintain the group coherence behind what we're doing, so that we can facilitate learning. We can facilitate peer review, which can happen in a group if it's of enough size. Yeah, like even 5 people in a working group, everybody goes off and does a ritual, comes back and reports their results. Hey, there's like some really key commonalities there. That's important. Maybe we want to look at that next. And so you can run like a research kind of group. And because you're dealing with people who are initiated all into the same system, they're going to be, using many of the same techniques. There are going to be more commonalities between them, and there are going to be agreements on some basic symbol sets that we use so we can communicate more easily. And then beyond that, you have this deeper level of, the kind of imprints created by the degrees and by the magical currents involved. And so if you're working with a similar thelemic magical current, you've got a bunch of thelemic initiates. Probably what you're going to see, or what it seems like you see, is more powerful magic overall, because that coherence is stronger, and that in turn allows all of the magicians to pool their energy together more effectively in the context of this single operation. So basically, that's kind of my take on initiation, how initiation works, how mystery schools work. And I think hopefully I haven't been like too disjointed tonight and rambly. I've kind of bounced around between a couple of different points. Gatekeeping to try and keep your tradition filled with like-minded people, and to try and make it clear to outsiders that what kind of magic actually falls in tradition is not a toxic gatekeepery thing. And when I talk about gatekeeping, that's not what I'm talking about. I am talking about secrecy about specific technology, initiatory secrets that are kept secret because there's like something awful in the initiation, as opposed to, because of the mystery school technology. You have issues with, that type of thing. I'm discouraging people from practicing in general, dogpiling people on the internet. All that stuff is toxic gatekeepery stuff. The initiatory platform, it's designed to increase your personal coherence, which will help to make your magic better. It increases your coherence with the group, which will help to make your magic work better in the context of a group. And a group of magicians can go ahead generally and conjure up more power than a single magician can. There's like some equations for that. Maybe I should have included that, but there's some equations for that on my blog under the operant equation, and how power fields go together and all that kind of stuff. You could dig into that, in the context of some of my magical model posts. And then this idea of fraternity, and fraternity is powerful. Okay. The Masons discovered this a long time ago. Okay. You've got people, you're all basically like sworn to the same obligations to be, fair and hospitable and so on with each other. And out of that can come this kind of platform on which people can work together without worrying much about being, cheated or exploited, taken advantage of, and so forth. And I mean, this was actually put to the test, in the 1950s after World War II. In Masonry, you had a whole bunch of people join Masonic lodges going overseas. And so that was if you've got a bunch of, 18-year-olds fighting World War II, they don't know anybody, but hey, I can join this group of guys and we can have a lodge, overseas where we're fighting. So tons of people did that. So tons of the soldiers who came back from World War II were Masons. And like shortly after World War II and through the 1950s, it was difficult to even be a business person if you weren't a Mason, because you weren't part of the in group. And I mean, some of that did contribute to, the establishment, insularity of the 1950s. So it wasn't entirely a positive thing. But I certainly think in the context of magical fraternity, we're talking about smaller groups. We're not talking about this huge thing that's permeating everything in society. Fraternity is really powerful, where, okay, we're brothers and sisters. We work together. We have each other's backs, to the degree that is possible, given, the things that can happen in the context of human drama and all these other variables. But I do think that common foundation does stabilize that a lot within a group that has shared initiatory experiences and, continues to work with those kinds of magical and spiritual currents. So I think I'm going to stop there for tonight. I think that's most of what I wanted to cover. Again, I got the donation link. You know what to do with the donation link at this point. YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, notifications. Make sure you do that so you know when we go online with these events. And otherwise, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for listening, and have a great rest of the evening. Love is the law. Love under will.